So let's just say that you just had an incredible experience. Maybe you had, for me, pistachio ice cream for the very first time. It was amazing. And when I try to communicate that to my friends, it was something I had a hard time being able to really get them to understand what it is that I was trying to say about this experience of pistachio. I had always kind of misunderstood pistachio ice cream. I thought that they were more minty because of the green color. I had my own biases, and the revelation that I had when I had the experience of tasting was quite extreme, and it moved me. But I still can't quite get the words to communicate what I'm trying to say. Well, that's because there are so many reasons why we miscommunicate when we are trying to communicate with another person. And so I want to talk about in this section, in this video, about the different communication gaps that happen when you're working with people and you're trying to communicate something. So here we're going to talk about the communication gaps that you should be aware of when you're trying to communicate with someone. So the first big communication gap is sometimes what we actually say is not what we really mean. So sometimes finding the right words can be a challenge. And have you ever had that where you had something that you were really trying to communicate on, but you just couldn't find the right words to nail it? That right there is a communication gap. What I'm meaning to say versus what I'm trying to say, there is a difference there. And so that's just one of the areas in which communication gaps happen all the time. So again, it's just something for people to be mindful of. The next part is, well, what someone heard can be really different than what was said, especially when there's a lot of noise out there. And by noise, I don't mean just physical noise, although that's part of it, but as we're communicating through technology, sometimes microphones don't work. Sometimes internet speeds slow down and you don't hear what someone said. Sometimes we're in a crowded space and you can't really hear everything that was what someone said. Sometimes you just have a lot going on and you're not really hearing what people are saying. So there's a variety of reasons of why this happens. But what happens is that we hear very differently the different words than what someone actually said. Maybe we hear incomplete, maybe we hear differently, maybe we don't hear at all. But that's just something to be mindful of, where there's a common miscommunication gap of getting clear on what someone actually said versus what you heard. Now, there's another gap that's happening here, is how you interpret what someone said from what they actually mean. So for example, let's say that you were saying something along the lines of trust. Well, I might have a different understanding of what trust means than what you have an understanding of what trust means. And so how I interpret when you say that word might be a little different from what you're actually meaning to say. So the difference in meaning can be very different from person to person, especially if you're from a different culture, a different lifestyle, a different whatever it may be. You know, one word in New York is going to mean something very different than in California sometimes. So we can actually interpret we might hear the actual word, but the meaning behind the word might be really, really different. So those are areas in which miscommunication gaps can happen. What you mean to say versus what you actually say versus what someone heard, and then what someone understands what you to actually mean versus what you actually mean. What we want to try to do is close this gap here. What someone is meaning to say versus what you really understand what they are meaning to say. And so there's a couple of things that we can do to help with that, to help close these miscommunication gaps. And these are very simple, easy things. First thing is just ask a clarifying question. What did you mean when you said trust? Did you say this or did you say that? Right? So asking those questions to clarify what someone means. One of the beauties of that is that it's showing the other person that what they say actually matters rather than just letting it go. not really caring. By really working to understand what someone says, you show that there's importance in their words. Another thing that you can do is also rephrase what someone said, right? Saying, okay, so what I'm hearing you say is this. It sounds like you're saying that. Is that what you mean? And then you can have them continue to say, well, yeah, that is actually what I'm trying to say. There are times where someone is telling me something and I was able to rephrase it back to them better than they were able to articulate it. And the way that they light up is tremendous. So if you can really deeply listen to what someone's meaning to say, and even though they don't have the right words, but you reflect back what they actually mean, they're going to feel really heard that way. So rephrasing what someone said is a really powerful tool. The last piece here is to really listen to their tone of voice, not what they're saying, but how are they saying it, right? Sometimes, a lot of times when I'm talking to someone and I ask them a question, hey, how does that sound to you? And I hear like, yeah, that works. I go, okay, I'm hearing the yes, but I don't feel a yes. And they go, well, actually, it's because of such and such and such. So when we listen to their tone of voice, even though their words might be saying one thing, we can really hear for how they're feeling about something and check in with what's behind those words. So if you hear the soft kind of ambivalent yes, well, that's not a real yes. There's more to it than that. And so you can work to understand what people are really trying to communicate just by their tone of voice. So I hope that was helpful. And again, just the communication gaps that we talked about is what someone means to say versus what they actually say, what they actually say versus what we hear versus what they actually mean. And we want to close the gap between what they mean and what we understand of what they mean. And we can do this just by asking clarifying questions, rephrase what someone said, and listening to their tone of voice. I hope this was helpful for you. I hope that you can use this to start closing some communication gaps that you might have with your team or even some people you care about. If you're looking to get more information about how to work together with your team, I have a free resource below. That resource is there to help you to figure out how you and your team can work together and be much more collaborative and much more productive in the long run. I hope this was helpful. Thank you so much for being here and have a great day.